In the next few months, we are finally getting some new MMO content, in the form of expansions, because let's face it, that's all we have left. Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers and the Elder Scrolls Online, random letters that may or may not make a word, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Elsweyr, are coming out this summer within a few weeks of each other. And since we gamers are a frugal people, I have had several people come to me saying, if I can't buy both, which one should I buy, or which game should I start playing now so I'm ready for the expansion? You're asking me? Why? I don't f***ing know anything. But I have been playing both of these games over the past few weeks, preparing for the fact that I will inevitably have to cover these expansions. I do this to myself. So I've been alternating days between the two. One day in ESO, the next in 14, then back to ESO, and then back to 14, and so on. Which is kind of a mindfuck, because other than the fact that both of these are story-heavy MMOs, they are polar opposites in every other way. Now, I'm not here to say which one is better. I am not qualified for that. Hell, I'm barely qualified to have a YouTube channel, and they let literally anyone have those. No, what I want to do is talk about my experiences over the past few weeks with each game, because on a serious note, I think it'll provide a good insight into the philosophy of how these games function, and how two completely different approaches can yield a successful MMO. On a less serious note, I'm doing it because I spent all my time playing these games, and if I don't talk about them, then I don't have anything to f***ing talk about. So Final Fantasy XIV. I'll start here because this is the MMO I had the most preparing to do in. See, when I said Final Fantasy XIV is a story-heavy game, that was a f***ing understatement. The game releases a ton of main story quests with each expansion, and even more added through patches in between. That's a lot of nodding. And before you begin playing those nice new expansions and start seeing all that nice new content, you're gonna need to complete all of the MSQs you haven't done yet. So if you're someone like me who doesn't play 14 on the reg, well, you're gonna have some catching up to do. I knew this going in, so I immediately got started questing. Unfortunately for me, after a few quests, I hit a mandatory raid that required me to have a certain gear score before I could enter, which meant I needed to grind out some dungeons and raids for currency so I could get some better gear. Which is great, because that's what I like doing in Final Fantasy XIV anyway. I have always found 14 to shine in its dungeons and raids, particularly because the classes are so well designed. While grouping up, the classes truly come into their own as you get to use everything you have available to you. So the best way to get the currency I needed was through dungeon roulettes. However, I couldn't do the level 70 dungeon roulette, which would provide me with the most currency I needed for the time I'd put in. I'd either have to do the lower level roulettes, which would take longer, or I would need to complete the 3 new dungeons 14 has introduced since I last played. Knowing I'd probably need to do those at some point, I figured I might as well do those. And hey cool, they added new dungeons to the game, that's awesome! But you can't simply do a new dungeon in Final Fantasy XIV. No. You've got to unlock these dungeons through more quests! Now this isn't a bad thing, I'm just letting you know. If you're thinking of getting back into Final Fantasy XIV, you're gonna be doing a lot of questing. Even if you don't really want to. That's very much how 14 works. I'm a dungeon type of guy. If I had the choice in any MMO, I'd fully level up doing dungeons, or possibly exploring, but we're not talking about that right now. I find questing to be a bit boring in just about any MMO nowadays. And I have never found the questing to be a very strong part of 14. The story? Yes. The quests that are designed around the story, not so much. So I found preparing for the expansions to be somewhat of a slog. To finish the quest, you'll probably also need to do some gear grinding, which will then be nullified the moment Shadowbringers releases. Again, not a bad thing. I only mention it because Final Fantasy XIV is very much what I think of as a standard MMO when it comes to expansions. A new storyline, a new class, a new race, new skills, basic gear drops that will immediately replace everything you've worked so hard for to get over the past year or two, and of course a new continent full of quests meant to walk you step by step toward the newly increased level cap. And then it starts all over again! And then there's Elder Scrolls Online, which is completely different! The game's entire approach to, well, anything, can be summed up as, whatever. There is no catching up. Which leaves me without a lot to say about my recent time in ESO. You don't need to do anything before starting Elsweyr. You don't need to own Morrowind or Somerset. You don't need to do quest or gear grinding. Hell, you don't even need to have played the game before. Due to the level scaling in Elder Scrolls, you can hop right in and start doing Elsweyr content at level 1. That's pretty much the selling point of the game. It's all about the adventures that you make for yourself. Do whatever you want, whenever you want. Or don't. Whatever. You don't even need the expansion to hit endgame or to be competitive. So unless you just want the new Necromancer class or a new area to explore, whatever. I can see this as a bit of a detriment because the question suddenly changes from, should I buy this? To, why should I buy this? That why is very important. Without a set path to follow in ESO, I've often heard people say, well, I don't really see a reason to log in right now. Or, I'll get to it eventually. Leading to them just never logging in. There's not really a goal per se, it's just more ESO to explore and experience. And again, that's not bad. I love ESO. It's my favorite MMO. But as an example, I've never completed Morrowind because I just haven't felt the need to. With a game that allows players to make their own path and doesn't provide them with a set goal, sometimes players get a bit lost and even lose motivation. I can't stress enough that I'm not trying to say either approach is bad. You really can't argue with the fact that they're working, as both MMOs have been pretty stinking successful in a genre that doesn't see a lot of success anymore. I see these differences as how each game is attempting to capture and hold their player base, which, don't forget, is their overall goal. You're a Pokemon to them, and they gotta catch them all. Personally, I see myself as a Snorlax, or a Lickitung. Ladies and gentlemen, in my eyes, ESO is the definition of casual friendly. No need to catch up or anything. It doesn't matter if you take some time off from the game, you just do whatever you want whenever you want. Final Fantasy XIV is far more planned and laid out, and provides definitive character progression. They want you to experience their story and their world in their way. And neither one is wrong. It's just two very different ways of presenting content. This could even be seen as Western versus Eastern design concepts, which would be something fun to explore sometime in the future with some other games, I don't know. So yeah, what should you take away from this video? Do whatever you want, I don't fucking care. And that was my thoughts on Final Fantasy XIV and the Elder Scrolls Online. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button for future videos. I've also put up another video for you to watch right up here. If you want, you can follow me on social media. And if you really want to help the channel, you can donate to me on Patreon like these other amazing people. I bet they're all Pikachus because I'd like to take a peek at them. Ugh.